a moment or two about how the paper is brought out and what's involved. It is, of course, a morning paper, so
it's a morning paper, which means that we do the heavy-duty work in the evening before and into the wee hours of the morning. Generally, it works quite well, except when the Blue Jays play out on the coast and they have a 13-inning game, and then we don't quite get the scores in as much as some of our fans, and neither does the Star, and neither does the Globe. So essentially, we do the work the day before into the evening, into the wee hours of the morning. We prepare the material on computer terminals. After the editor looks over the story, he sends it to the main computer, which prints the type, and that type is pasted down on a page, and that's shot, and that makes the plate from which we make the paper page. In 1965, for example, we were still working with hot metal and linotypes, and we needed many more printers than we do today. And the idea that the reporter or the columnist or the editor would actually physically be setting the type indirectly through the computer was completely foreign to us.
I think of the Sun, now it's many things, but I think of it essentially as a columnist's paper. The most provocative, most entertaining columnists anywhere, I have to say. Is that your view of the paper?
Oh, yes, it's very much. Originally, it was because half of a necessity and half because we thought this was the way to go. I think that if we were founding a television station today, for example, on the Sun philosophy, we would be very much into personalities and hotline shows and interview shows and so on, and the news would have whoever our anchor man was participating. I'm the editor of the paper, responsible for the editorials and part of the group that forms overall policy, but I also am still expected to write 2 columns a week. I don't think there are very many editors in Canada who are expected to write 2 columns a week, and I think it's good, because every once in a while there I am running around like everybody else saying, what the heck am I going to write tomorrow?
If we had to make an observation, a generalization of a columnist, I guess we have to say, in the case of many of them, there's a distinct right slant to them. I heard someone say at one time, the Sun covers the gamut from Attila the Hun to Herbert Hoover. I don't think that's quite true.
Well, we have Walter Stewart working for us, whose mother was one of the founders of the CCF. Douglas Fisher, who is a very fine Ottawa columnist, was, of course, the House Leader of the NDP. So I guess you could say he's evolved closer to being a conservative. But, well, we are quite frankly a right-wing newspaper, but we are a right-wing newspaper with some compassion. I mean, we have never proposed the end of the welfare system or the hell with all those people in unemployment. I always think that we are right-wing, but we are a caring right-wing. But we are an issue-oriented newspaper. So on various issues, we may take a right-wing approach, but we care most about the issue. So we often are very pragmatic. It's funny, I often find myself criticizing politicians for being pragmatic, except the Toronto Sun is very pragmatic. I mean, it's what we think will work, what we think is fairest for the people, those are the things that concern us. Not as much ideology as some of the people would like us to have.
The relationship of the columnists to the management, to the editor, is it one of arm's length?
With a fist at the end. It's like an armed truce. I was a daily columnist for so many years, and I worked on the theory as a daily columnist that as long as whatever I wrote didn't offend people, have bad taste, wasn't libelous or contempt of court, it should run exactly the way I wrote it. And that's the basic view of all of our columnists, and that happens. Generally, they're responsible for whatever appears under their name. Don't blame me.
Have there been any clashes in your time?
There are clashes constantly, but generally there are columnists who at the Sun who could say that management has never criticized them either directly or indirectly for a column they may have written. We may privately say to ourselves, gee, that really wasn't quite on the mark, or that guy's getting tired. He must have been trying to get away early on holidays. But no, what you see is what you get. The editors play very little role with the columnists.
Letters to the editor, I assume that you select them?
Yep.
Are they edited?
They are edited for length. We try, I mean, it should be fairly obvious from the length of our letters that that's about all that we plan to run for everything except the letter of the day.
Why does the paper have the last word in those letters?
I didn't like it when it started. Peter Worthington that was his idea, and now I see other newspapers doing it. Now, if you read some of those replies, we don't always take a swipe at them.
Tongue-in-cheek.
We're sometimes tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic, sometimes rude. If we're rude to too many people, you hear the reporters muttering, who does that guy think he is anyway?
Your critics, I know from day one, have included a very vocal group of feminists, women's livers, who go in an absolute rage about page 3.
Yeah, page 3 is the biggest plus for the Sun and also the biggest curse. It helps. We sell thousands of papers at the GM Gate in Oshawa, for example, and about half of those guys want to buy it for page 3. I look at it as our Trojan horse. It gets people to buy the paper. When they buy it, they then discover that after the Sunshine Girl, there are more columns of political opinion than in the Star and the Globe combined.
But aren't you sacrificing a potential readership here, though? A great many women who may not be that active in the movement, who still feel that this sort of thing is exploitive and degrading and...
Well, we point out to them, Star and the Globe have Sunshine Girl pictures in another way. They pretend it's a woman cooling off because of the heat wave or something. No, we believe there's nothing wrong with running a picture of nice-looking women. We think that there is something wrong if the women's pictures are tacky or sleazy, and occasionally we do run them, and the photographers and the editors yell and scream at each other and say, hey, that's exactly what women's livers are complaining about. That was a demeaning picture. But the Sun, quite candidly, quite frankly, sees nothing wrong with running the pictures of good-looking women and good-looking men, because there are sunshine boys back there, and from the letters I get, the women seem to want to have those sunshine boys take off more of their clothes than we will let them.
We're not going to get into that. The John Downing regime, how is it going to differ months and years ahead from Barbara Amiel and Peter Worthington?
Well, we have a funny operation. We have editors that if I tried to tell them what to do, they would say, hey, that's none of your bloomin' business. So I don't like to think that the Toronto Sun is a John Downing regime newspaper. There's Paul Godfrey there. There's Doug Creighton there. There's a collection of people. I may be slightly more moderate than Peter Worthington, slightly more moderate than Barbara Amiel. But the readers, you know, they don't want you to be too moderate. They want you to care passionately about the issues and to talk out. And when Brian Mulroney does something stupid on pensions, the de-indexing, to say so. Like I wrote an editorial last week or so where I called Michael Wilson a nice man but politically dumb. Well, that's not normally the language of a newspaper, but the Sun readers like that and expect that.
And not normally the language of a newspaper that's thought to be on the right.
No. Well, I had a letter the next day that said, ever since Barbara Amiel has left and Peter Worthington, the paper has gone to the dogs. It's a liberal rag now. I point out that I've been there right from the start. Amiel hasn't left. She's writing from England twice a week.
I assure you I didn't write that letter. John Downing, our guest on this edition of Newsmakers. Thank you very much, John. We're going to have you back again very soon.
Thank you.
Newsmakers with 590 CKEY News commentator Pete McGarvey is seen every week at this time. We welcome your letters. Write Cable 10, Rogers Cable TV, 855 York Mills Road, Don Mills, Ontario, M3B 1Z1.